you very much, all of you. We're now live, okay? I'm Paul here. If I may start, shall we introduce ourselves? Okay, starting from you.
I'm Brent Poole and I'm the Green Party Erewash candidate for the second election running, and yeah, that's me, a local school teacher.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you, Paul. Hello, everybody. I'm Adam Thompson. I'm Labour's candidate to be your MP at the election next week now. I've lived in the area for the past 9 years and have spent a lot of time chatting to people on doorsteps throughout that time.
Hi, I'm James Archer. I'm the Liberal Democrat candidate in the upcoming election. I've also lived in Erewash for about 9 years and I'm an engineer in my day job.
I'm Maggie Throop. I have been the Member of Parliament for the last 9 years for Erewash, and I think I can beat you guys. I've lived here for over 10 years.
23 years.
My name's Liam Booth-Isherwood. I'm the Reform UK candidate for Erewash. I don't live in Erewash, full disclosure. I live just on the border.
Okay, what we're going to do, I will ask the first question. There's loads of questions, even live chat. There's too many questions, but I don't think within this an hour and a half we'll be able to cover the whole question. That was why originally I was estimating 3 good hours to give the people of Erewash the time to ask all their questions. But if I may begin with this, and then later on I will leave it to my reporter, Rod Malcolm, and my feature writer, John Shaw, to ask the rest of the questions. What is your attitude towards local government? For many years, local councils have had their powers reduced, but provide a range of help in emergencies like COVID or flooding. Councils are widely praised in Westminster, but then have their government grants cut. At a time when politicians talk about devolving power from Whitehall, do you think true councils like Erewash are being neglected? If we may start with you, sir.
Yeah, well, the Green Party does grassroots democracy more than other parties. We're member-led. We believe in local government. We've got 800 councillors and we're actually growing at a local level because we effectively believe in local democracy. So we fully support councils. It's quite shocking when you see, central government, Conservative central government cutting funding to Tory central government, and now you've got Labour who can't cut the grass because they've got no money. People blaming Labour. Well, actually, that's down to 14 years of underfunding of local government, and then people having to carry the can. Unfortunately, our local politics has been punch and judy for the last generation. Where one side blames the other side, blames the other side. We need local people to step up. Our voting rates are about 30% to 40%. That's shocking for local democracy. And some of the councillors there, they only get elected because you could put Coco the Clown in a blue suit or a red suit in some constituencies, and they just get elected because they know mates down at the golf club. So we do need a better candidate of councillor, which means we need to fund the local council. We need to attract people into local councils, which means local councils need to represent people. And too often people have been taken for granted in this local community. So I'd like our councils to be stronger. I'd like a local democracy stronger. I do believe the local mayor is a good idea, but again, the voting rates of that was not good enough as well. So local engagement is needed, but people who are councillors need to step up and actually do the job of councillors rather than seeing out retirement and their buddies down at the golf club thinking it's a good idea because they've got a couple of letters behind their names. So the Green Party would want to do more local democracy, fund our local services, fund our local council. And it's interesting to see, Maggie at the moment is campaigning on cutting the grass and brown bin charges, how much local matters do matter. And I've seen people on Facebook so wound up about the grass. The interesting thing is they weren't wound up about the cuts to the health services and the disability services and the SEND services in schools. I just wish people sometimes could see all the work that councils do instead of criticising councils, but help councils. But that funding has to come from central government as well.
Okay,
thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Paul. Yes, so I think it's really important as well that we are funding local councils properly. I think Brent actually has touched on some really important points there. My understanding is that since 2010, when the Labour government last left control, the local council's funding from central government has dropped from somewhere in the region of £4 million to a tiny couple of £100,000 over the course of the last 14 years. This is as a result of the government cuts that have been implemented brutally over the last 14 years. Now, I would love to be able to sit here and say that Labour's going to wave a magic wand and give councils the money that they need to collect the brown bins for free, for example. Unfortunately, I can't do that because our government has crashed the economy. That said, Labour's predominant goal in this election is to sort out the national economy so that we can grow the economy and ultimately provide funding. Brent touched on how the local Labour Council was forced last year to charge for brown bins. I think it's really important to highlight the background behind this. So when the Labour Council took control from the Conservatives this time last year, they were told, oh, hello, welcome to the council. You know, just so you're aware, there's been about a £1.4 million-ish shortfall in year funding. Now, at the moment, there's about £5 million in the reserves. Once you drop below about £3 million, that's when we legally have to declare bankruptcy. So basically, fix it, or in about a year and a half, we're going to go bankrupt. Now, I think the Labour Council has done a fantastic job over the last year by taking some tough decisions, that they've completely eradicated that £1.4 million overspend, and in fact have stabilised the local finances, and in fact for the first time in 20 years put a little bit of money back into the reserves this year. That is the financial stability that you can expect from a Labour government.
Okay, thank you, sir.
The Liberal Democrats are also a party of local government. We build from the bottom, and in coalition we were the architects behind the Localism Act, which gave you parish councils with powers, and during coalition we helped maintain grants for councils so that council tax didn't have to go up. Council tax, one of the most unfair forms of taxation. Now, the pressures on local councils have been exacerbated, particularly on the county councils where they have a huge adult social care budget. We would fund adult social care from central government by taxing the banks and from reforming capital gains tax in order to take that burden off of local government so it can be delivered, and free personal care can be delivered from central government funds.
Thank you.
Right, well, once again, the Conservatives believe in devolution and local government, and that's shown by the fact that we implemented the new mayor for the East Midlands to attract extra funding and investment. I think I'd like to take issue with Adam about the state of the local council when Labour took over in May last year. It was in a healthy position, and in fact Labour in their manifesto for that election promised people they'd help them with the cost of living. What did they do? The first thing they did was start to charge for the brown bins being emptied. That's a stealth tax, and that's it on top of the increase in council tax. So under Labour, we've seen people having to pay more for less, as we've seen from the grass verges as well. But one thing, as in my role as Member of Parliament, then it's important that I work with whatever colour of local government. And on behalf of the residents of Erewash, I actually lobbied the government minister with responsibility for the local government finance settlement. And we actually got a higher than inflation increase for Erewash. And we've got an even higher increase for Derbyshire County Council, who've got more responsibilities. I think that's really important to recognise that we are doing relatively well here, but I want more for Erewash, and I will always fight and lobby on behalf of Erewash residents, because to me, they're the ones who are important.
Thank you, Simone.
I don't think there's a circumstance where you can treat any sort of budgetary process, whether it be local or national government, in a way that you wouldn't treat your own personal finances. I think there has undoubtedly been some cuts from central government to the local government. I know Maggie's made a comment that she has gone away and attempted to get more funding. How much of that would have come from the Levelling Up Fund, how much of that would have come from a different MP lobbying for it, I don't know. What I can say to you is, reform going in, we will always have a conversation with absolutely anybody, whatever colour of the political spectrum they are, and we will be honest with the people of Erewash about what the state of the finances are. After looking at the finances, we will then assign the money where we deem it most appropriate to be so, whether that be social care, whether that be simply getting your grass verges cut, or more police. But that all starts for me with a good conversation with whomever's in the local council.
Right, thank you very much, Ian. With the audience, does anyone want to ask a question?
Number one first, shall we?
Person number one. Who's number one? All right, yeah, go on.
My name's Andy Pott. I'm a 71-year-old pensioner, still working. And my question is this. I'm out in the bars and the cafes of this town, and invariably there's always an argument when you get with the friends and that about Brexit. Is it a disaster or is it a success? And I would say, it's pretty divided and it sometimes gets heated. But I don't seem to see this on the debates on TV with the parties. It's like, it's not mentioned. I'd just like to know, what you guys think. Is it a success or a disaster?
Right, shall we start from Liam then? This time?
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't say by any stretch of the imagination it's been a disaster. You take into account everything that's happened over the last sort of 2-3 years, and that inevitably is going to play a part in the effects that Brexit would have had, positively or negatively. I'll leave that for you to decide. But for me, it's not mentioned enough. We don't discuss it enough, and we haven't Brexited properly. There's still more we can do. There's still more conversations that we could have, and there's funding that hasn't been tapped into. The Conservatives have gone away and done trade deals internationally. Would they have happened anyway? I think so, if I'm honest. Sorry, you were
I used to work in import-export.
Yeah.
There's no country we didn't trade with when we was in the EU, not one.
Exactly, and I think when you talk about, I think it's, for me, businesses and talking to business leaders, small, medium enterprises, it's the same story. It's red tape, paperwork. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say, I'm sure every single person on this panel will tell you, I can do it better, or we can do better than what currently is. What I can tell you is there's just quite simply got to be more we can do, and we need to go away and look at ways of cutting that red tape to make life easy for farmers, make it easy for people doing imports, exports, and just local businesses in general. It's got to be done better and it's got to be done easier.
Thank you, Liam. Anyone else?
Right. Sorry.
Sorry.
So, well, thank you for the question, Andy. And you probably remember that in the referendum in Erewash, it was 63% to come out of the EU.
53%, you say?
63%. And nationally, obviously, the vote was to come out, and we're a democracy. So whatever side of the argument we were on before that, then it's important that we implemented that democratic decision. Obviously, I think people thought that the day after we'd be able to come out, and it's not quite as straightforward as that. There has been a lot of negotiations, and as Liam said, we've been able to secure a lot of new trade deals, which to me are really exciting with countries worldwide. Going back before the EU was formed and going back many, many years, we used to trade with many nations as part of the Commonwealth, and we're going back to that, which to me is really, really good. But I think we've got to remember it is a process, and it will take time to get through everything and to make sure that we do maximise that Brexit dividend, which there definitely is. And I think I think as Liam alluded to, that we were going through the process. Remember, we got Brexit done early 2020, and then COVID struck, and a lot had to be put on hold, and then obviously various other things. But we've got it through Parliament, and now we're working through everything else. So I think probably the person in the street may not necessarily notice the difference because it is a process. But believe me, we're not beholden to the EU anymore.
Okay, thank you. James?
So it has been a disaster for certain areas, young people, students wanting to study abroad. There should have been a massive opportunity for farming. I remember Michael Gove standing up and saying we're going to have farming for the environment and some of the highest food standards anywhere in the world. It's not been realised. We haven't funded our farmers properly. It's a real missed opportunity of Brexit, getting out of the Common Agricultural Policy. We should have taken that forward, and it's been missed. Our farmers are now underfunded and struggling. It was a success for direct democracy. Whether you believe in direct democracy or not, people did vote to leave, and we have left. The Liberal Democrats would like to see us move a little bit back towards Europe, getting back into Erasmus. That's the programme that allows students to study abroad. and getting back into the single market eventually. But it's a slow process. We want to move that way because we think it has been a disaster.
Thank you very much, James.
Right.
Sorry, thanks, Paul. Yeah, thanks for your question, Andy. I really appreciate that. I think you're right. This is something that we need to talk about. And yeah, I make no secret at all of the fact that I campaigned pretty hard to remain in the EU. But when we lost, and this is something I agree with Maggie on, actually, not a lot of things that we agree on, but on this we do, the Remain side did lose, and it was the right thing to come out of the EU. And I don't think that the government has made the best that they could have done out of that process. You know, there were opportunities that were to be held by leaving the European Union, and I don't think that we've taken advantage of those. I think there's a lot of work to do. I would like to see, and the Labour Party more broadly would like to see, some of those relationships with the European Union rebuilt, working a little bit closer to deal with some of the immigration issues, for example, also to deal with some of the veterinary issues around the imports and exports of animals, etc. I think there's a lot of work to be done. Brexit is not done, no matter how many times that we say it is. This is a long process. I don't believe that we are fully extricated from where we were a few years ago, and there's an awful lot of work to be done. So yeah, thank you for raising it, Andy. I think it's really important.
Thank you very much.
The honest answer to your question is they're afraid to talk about it because they're afraid to admit their mistakes, and that is the greatest mistake of politicians, that they can't stand up and say they got it wrong and face the people. The fact is we were lied to, manipulated. This country has self-imposed itself, the only country in existence ever to take itself out of an economic union. We fought Napoleon so he would not isolate Britain. Britain fought 2 world wars not to have a Europe dominated by Germany. You've given up your God-given birthright to be at the centre of Europe. Why? So that certain individuals can line their pockets. Putin is laughing at us. Well, his mate, guess who his mate is? He's laughing at us too, because it's made this country weaker. It's made this country weaker economically. It's made this country weaker when it comes to economic power, social power, and every single sphere of influence. It's made this country weaker. And that's why they don't want to talk about it, because they want to admit their mistakes, and that's classic politics. Now, you can hear in my accent, I would say that Brexit caused me a deep-seated trauma. I grew up in the Troubles in Northern Ireland. And if any of these want to undo the Good Friday Agreement by touching the European Court of Human Rights, I'm going to warn you now. You will mess with the security of this country in order to satisfy the whims of a certain faction of a political party who's only in for their own gain. They would risk a peace process just to satisfy certain individuals who have walked away and taken the profits out to their tax havens, and they are laughing at us. Because Brexit has done nothing for the ordinary people of this country. They were made false promises, and that's democracy. Democracy means you change your mind. Democracy means you negotiate, you talk, you listen to. We were given a simple binary choice. That's not democracy. That's a form of dictatorship. We should get back around the table. We should negotiate with our European partners. We should be back discussing with them because we need them. What is the point in we hear all about the security of the European people? Churchill himself would be turning in his grave. He was one of the architects of the European Union because we needed that to stop Russia. So he now wouldn't be standing with the likes of Farage. He'd be standing with the likes of the people saying, let's have closer European integration because we work better when we work with other people. So I'm sorry that Brexit has caused this, but in the Green Party, we want to get us back in the European Union as quickly as we can possibly. But when the British people are ready. But when we're ready, we will push for get back in the European Union, and that is because it's the right thing to do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Number 2.
Yeah, she's
You want number 2, okay.
My name's Bev Harris, and I've been you all. I've lived here 63 years.
Good for you, Bev.
Kirkcallam. What was Kirkcallam, which is losing its identity. And I'm here for Kirkcallam Green Squeeze, who's representing 6,000 Kirkcallamers and the people of Dale Abbey. And my question will follow my explanation, which is, the recently completed flawed core strategy review looks set to possibly improve destruction of Kirkcallam's precious biodiverse green belt with the over 75% of all Erewash's housing allocation to be dumped in and around Ilkeston. If that alone is not bad enough, alongside the thousands socially dividing, gentrifying luxury houses, the proposals also include the infamous, which our honourable lady there calls the road to nowhere, 40-mile-per-hour bypass road to nowhere, across established medieval green Kirkcallam landscape, further increasing the polluted congestion in an already struggling area against the publicly expressed wishes and opposition of over 1,000 of the residents. My question is, Are your various parties signed up to this new style of non-democracy, or would you be bold enough to return to the original plan where the council represents devolution, its residents over the fickle whims of Whitehall-based ministers like Lee Rowley, who came in and put his size 10 Doc Martens smack over the top of us?
Okay.
Prevent James Dawson doing what should be done.
Thank you very much. Can we start with you, Brent?
Yeah, we've had many conversations about this, and you know where I stand in this. We need housing, but we don't need housing for the people of Erewash. What we need is better housing for the people of Erewash. The population of this area is quite static. It's the second slowest growing population.
Why do we need 6,000 houses
We don't.
when there's only 800 increased population?
Derby and Nottingham need it, and this is the problem with signing up to the regional development area. I worry about the South Derbyshire, Erewash, the Freeport, the housing, the development, and this infinite growth thing. This top-down economics we see, and we've seen it with high-speed rail coming through. And people are always selling this, we need this, we need this. The people of this area need better homes. Yes, they do need homes, but the right homes in the right place for the right people. A housing estate of 7,000 people, which has got very little services, which is basically a circular road, which is Kirkhallam, is already congested. It has two secondary schools, which practically are absolutely full up as it is. It is on the floodplain at the very bottom. And at the present moment, the number of services, I play football there, let's just say the long grass is more akin to a certain type of sports. So it doesn't need more housing. It actually needs better services before you even think of housing. But then you realise the politics of housing comes like this. The Conservatives didn't want to put the housing in their leafy areas because they didn't want the housing in the areas where they vote. Now what would Labour do? Labour will put the housing in those areas. What will the Conservatives do? They'll put the housing in Spondon Wood where they know that it's politically expedient. We're playing sort of a housing bingo game of where do you stick the housing. What we at the Green Party would do is just simply spread the housing across the whole of the borough where everybody takes their fair share. The second thing is both Ilkeston and Long Eaton are congested. Why? Because they're two very densely populated old industrial towns that cannot cope with the infrastructure. So the last thing you do is pile more houses to two densely populated areas. Erewash is the third most densely populated area of Derbyshire, and yet we've got 80% of its greenbelt. So that tells you that these two areas are massively congested. When you take the bus routes which are being cut, you take all the services that are being cut, you just can't keep piling people into these areas and hoping for the best. Now the last question is, why was Kirkhallam chosen? Unfortunately, because the people of Kirkhallam didn't wake up to the reality of what was happening until it was too late. They were sold down the political expediency line, and I suppose people didn't realise that people like yourself don't have the cultural capital. Well, they got it wrong. Because that's the thing that we Greens would do, is grassroots, ordinary people should be listened to. Their environmental concerns should be listened to. They know their area and they know what they need. So go and ask them first, do they want the housing? Do they need the housing? And then if they do, let's give them social housing, because that's what Kirkhallam needs. Housing for OAPs, housing for the next generation. Not Barratt homes built at expensive to property developers who give money to certain political parties.
Not one
Thank you very much.
single,
Thank you, Paul.
there's not one single elderly or
sorry,
disabled
can we-
dwelling within these houses.
Sorry, please.
Sorry.
Thanks for your question, Bev, and lovely to see you. I know you and your colleagues on Green Squeeze have been working really hard on this issue. And you alluded to this in the question. Labour stood on a manifesto this time last year, a local manifesto saying that they wanted to redo the core strategy. We felt that the local core strategy wasn't fair. Now, as you well know, and as you said, James Dawson, the Labour leader of the Erewash Borough Council, and his colleagues progressed forward with redoing that core strategy, and a few hours before they went to do that meeting to agree to rewrite it, they were stomped on by Michael Gove's office and told you have to follow the existing core strategy. I mean, this was ridiculous. It was awful. It was national government overthrowing local democracy, and I thought this was absolutely egregious. Now, I should say, Bev, Labour believes fundamentally in house building. I don't completely agree with everything that Brent says, because I do speak to a lot of people on doorsteps who do say, my kids still live with me and they would like to move into a house just down the road. But those houses don't exist. We do believe that we need to build houses. But we believe that as you build houses, absolutely, yeah. As we build houses, we've got to ensure that the infrastructure exists. It's not just roads to nowhere, it's schools, it's hospitals, it's dentists, it's shops. And Labour will re-legislate to make sure that the planning laws allow us to build not just the homes that we need, but also the infrastructure that surround those homes.
What
Thank you
about
very
the
much.
greenbelt? Can I just ask what about the greenbelt?
Yeah.
There are pockets of greenbelt that we keep hearing that you're going to be building on all the greenbelt, but then I have spoken with James, who
Yeah.
said it's going to be more the grey areas.
So our national policy on this, Bev, will be brownfield first. Now, we all know there's actually not that much brownfield in Erewash. There's a little bit, but not much. But it's brownfield first. And then we talk about the grey belt, which is the part of the green belt, which technically is green belt, but is actually sort of old car parks and things. So the importance is that we prioritise the sites that are most appropriate first and then move down the list.
In smaller
Can,
pockets, obviously.
excuse me, can I just, because there's so many
I'm sorry,
questions
yeah.
there, loads of them on the live chat at the moment, I don't even think we can get through all of it. So, James, please.
Hi, Bev. I don't think we've met before.
I haven't met you before.
No, but I was equally outraged that the council were overruled from central government. It's not the way to do things. Liberal Democrats believe in getting the consent from local people as to where to build, and we do build lots of houses in our councils we control in the south and east of the country. We build lots of houses. We build them where people want them, where their children want to move to. Our commitment, if we get it into government, would be to build 150,000 social houses, part of 380,000 houses a year that we want to build by the end of the Parliament. Social houses that people need, and build them where local authorities want to put them. This isn't happening at the moment because the developers have control. They don't want to build on brownfield sites because it's expensive to remediate the land, and by giving local authorities that money to build social homes, you get rid of that because the local authorities are building, not the developers. So that's what we'd like to do.
Thank you very much. Maggie?
Good to see you again, Bev.
Let's see them.
I got involved in politics, campaigning to stop building on the green belt. It was an 8-year campaign, and I stuck with it, and we stopped that development. So it's sort of like in my blood not to build on green belt. It really is. And
Which has been a bit more behind us.
and as you know, I opposed the initial plans from the local council, whether it was at Kirkcallam or Cotton Woods. To me, it was wrong. First of all, to build so many houses in 2 locations in the north of the borough rather than spread them across the whole of the borough. And secondly, to use green belt. And to me, it should always be brownfield first, and also be creative. We have got empty properties that could be converted into nice apartments and really good living accommodation in our towns to keep our towns alive as well. I think since the core strategy was put together, quite a lot of MPs were finding the same thing, that Greenbelt was being used as an easy option rather than actually as the very, very, very last resort. So when the legislation was going through just a few months ago as part of the Levelling Up Bill, we laid amendments to actually to change the way that it originally was top down, and we got it so it was bottom up, so it was really looking at the needs of the local community.
So why did Mr.
And
Rowley
that came into legislation after the core strategy went through. Now you mentioned obviously the change in administration. I did inform the new administration at the council that they could talk to the planning inspectorate and see if they could negotiate some parts of the core strategy to see if they could make amendments. Not the whole lot, not pull the whole lot, but parts of it. Because to me that's a way forward. And I think obviously moving forward, then the new legislation will definitely help prevent what is in place here. And that is why I was very keen to support those amendments. So we had quite a number of amendments, and I think we got them all through apart from one, all to do with housing in appropriate locations.
Not one of these allocations are in the former major constituencies. The former Tory constituencies are not having a house. They're not having as much as a glamping pod, never mind a house.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, this is obviously a Conservative area at the moment, and hopefully it will continue as such. But yeah, and as you say, you've already quoted my quote about the road. It's like Shallon's Way. You queue to get on it, you queue to get off it. And to me, it's bad planning. It's the wrong location for houses. We should be making sure that our town centres are vibrant, that we use all our brownfield sites, and really look at what we need for our population, and not take quotas from elsewhere and I'll fight all the way to stop the loss of green belt, whether it's Kirkcallam or Cotman Woods. I'm with you on that.
So you disagree with the government's decision?
I've said all along, I was against the core strategy from the very beginning. I sent letters to the leader of the council and to the chief executive of the council, because to me we needed to make sure that we use brownfield first, and that would be always my policy. And that's why I was very willing to put my name to the amendments to the legislation which we got through. I can't say any more than that.
Right.
But Maggie, your voting record is you've always voted with your government. It is your government strategy.
I think the fact
And
that
your council.
the fact I put my name to amendments that says I don't always vote. We actually negotiate with the government to get legislation amended to make sure it's right for our communities.
But
and
you
that's
didn't
the right.
rebel, Maggie.
And that's the right. I didn't need to rebel. We actually got our amendments through that we wanted.
But it's a Conservative council, a Conservative government. You're the Conservative MP, and you have never voted against your government.
You're talking about different timescales. I'm talking about legislation that went through in end of 2022. And so we talk about different timescales, and I think that's important. Working with older legislation before that, and when it came to me with legislation going through Parliament, where we're able to make changes and make amendments to the initial government legislation, then that's how government works. It's how Parliament works. It's how MPs work. Just in the same way that I negotiated for a higher inflation increase for local councils, that's I negotiated for better amendments to protect our green belt.
So on record, you're criticising your own council, your own Conservative council's plan.
I did at the time, and because to me it's what's right for the residents.
Sorry. Thank you, Maggie. Liam, please.
I'm going to bore you, Bev, and then I'm going to shock you. So I'm going to bore you and just go straight. Good question, by the way. Provoked a few conversations. The reform policy is very simple to build on brownfield sites and stay away from greenbelt sites. We all want to hear that. Sounds fantastic on paper. So here comes the shock. I find myself agreeing with the three gentlemen at the end. Not to say I disagree with you, Maggie. I appreciate your position on it. But I find myself agreeing with the three gentlemen sat on the end that we are the situation where a council can be bypassed by the government. A devolved government. Thank you very much. Well put. It seems absurd and I don't want to say offensive, but that seems a bit ridiculous. I live on a new build estate. I was fortunate, saved up enough money. I was able to put down a deposit on a new build estate, and I can tell you from experience that living in new build estates with, somebody coined the term road to nowhere, I think I've heard that one, that was entertaining, roads to nowhere, there is no walk routes out of my estate. You have to walk on grass verges. The congestion that builds up at the end of both ends of the estate is absolutely astonishing. So there will never be a situation with me as your candidate, prospective MP, where I would ever support the overruling of a local government on an issue as important as that. And when we are planning on building several thousand homes, when the population has increased by several hundred, I don't think anybody can justify that, so I'm not going to.
Thank you very much, Liam. What's number three, Meg?
I'm
Number
three.
three. Yeah, okay.
My name's Sarah Dawes. I've lived here on and off for 32 years. And my question to you all is about council tax. For a council tax band fee in Erewash, residents pay £2,155 a year. And that's based on 2022 stroke 2023 figures. Annually, with an average house price of £233,000. And with the average wage in Erewash of £33,994. In Westminster, for the same council band Group D, you will pay £975, with the average house price being £885,000 and the average wage being almost £50,000. Can you give me any reason why this disparage is there, and do your parties have any way of addressing that if you should get elected?
If we may start with Brent, please.
Well, we want to undo the feudal system, so to speak, because we're still living in a class feudal system where the wealthy seem to get wealthier in this country and the poor seem to get poorer, and people who strive seem to then fight among themselves. for what's left of the crumbs thrown from the top table. We want to move to a land tax because we recognise that the 43% of people in this country own the majority of the wealth, and that's what we want to move away from. We don't want to increase any taxes at that level. So our base tax rate will be the fact that we will want to move towards a land tax to get those who have got the wealthiest shoulders to pay their burden. Now, as some would say, they'll leave this country. Well, fine, they can go somewhere else, go back to Russia. They can call London, not Londongrad any longer, they can call it London again. Because these people don't, they're parasites, they come over here, they take advantage of situations, they don't pay their way. Same goes for the corporations and all those individuals. Ordinary people have been burdened too long with too much tax, and that's not fair. And it's all about redistribution of wealth for us, and that's how we would want to do that. That's what part of our policy would be.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, thank you, Sarah, for the question about kind of tax generally. So, I mean, Labour has said we won't be increasing taxes on working people. I think our position is that tax, generally speaking, is the highest it's been in 70 years. Under this government, we've got the most incredible tax prices. We would like to see taxes brought down. I would generally like to see the economy stabilised. I think the chaos of the last couple of years has been a real blight on our economic situation across the country, and we would like to see firstly that stabilised and that brought down. How we might be able to look at those specific council taxes in the future, I don't yet know. But what we are saying very much is no tax rises, and our general ethos is to ideally bring down tax in the next couple of years. Where we are going to change taxes is to remove tax on private schools. Remove tax exemption on private schools, put a proper windfall tax on the big oil and gas companies, and to remove the non-dom tax status to tax the ultra rich.
I mean, if anybody wants to take a look at these council tax rates, it seems to be the majority of London boroughs have much lower than we do in these areas with the higher average salaries.
Yeah.
So
it doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense.
I don't think people know.
No, and I think the other thing that we've got to point out there is if it wasn't for the fact that we keep getting these local government cuts from the funding that comes down from national government, the councils wouldn't have to necessarily put up the tax so much each year. I think it's something we'd love to look at.
All right, thank you, James.
Well, thank you, Sarah, for the figures that back up the point I made in another.
Backing up what my comments always do.
I try to do that myself. Council tax is the most unfair tax we have at the moment, in my opinion, and your figures back it up. The majority of that tax goes to pay for adult social care. Or not the majority, sorry, the biggest slice of that tax goes to pay for adult social care. If we move that into the national budget, then local authorities are not unfairly penalised by having more older adults in them, and then that tax can go down. The Liberal Democrats have often discussed in conference things like the land tax that the Greens Green colleague has mentioned. We're not going to go that far this time, but we want to make council tax fairer, and the social care, bringing that into national control is the way that we would do it.
Thank you very much, James. Maggie?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. You do make a very good point, and it's something that I've sort of looked at and struggled with. I think it's quite historical, and how it's got that variation, I really don't know, so I can't answer your question directly. But I think what I would say, and sort of James alluded to it a bit, that if you look at the council tax for what we pay in Erewash, the majority of it is to go to the county, which pays for roads, education, social care, although there's a precept for social care as well, but there's still social care elsewhere. So it's a smaller part actually for Erewash, which is the bins. The grass verges aren't being cut, so we're really getting value for money for what we pay for Erewash is another matter. But I think I would be, and I can understand your concern about the anomaly. I would be concerned about any changes in council tax without really, really good investigation of what will be fair for everybody. And what I do fear, and Adam's just had to let the cat out of the bag when he said that they would look at it in the future, that Labour would actually look at the council tax. I think there'd be more bands, so more people, but I would think overall be paying more. So I think sometimes we've got to be careful what we wish for. We've got quite a small banding system, which I think would be could be really messed about with under Labour, and I think we might end up finding we're paying more rather than actually bringing us down to Westminster level.
That's not what I said, for the record. Maggie's just come up with her own ideas.
Look at it in the future.
Can I just say
I made a
something?
note.
I think that all these London boroughs have the same issues that we do. They have grass verges, they have bump bins that have to be emptied, they have social care things. It's like not things, social concerns, commitments.
Yes.
But it just, you know, me being me, I'm thinking, well, it's London, and you know where all the money does seem to be going down to London rather than we seem to take the burden. I mean, Broxton pays even more than we do.
Yeah.
And they still have roads to maintain. London has roads to maintain. So.
And yet, when you look at educational funding, our children are the fourth worst. We get about £6,000 a year, where Camden gets £11,500 a year.
And Camden's also one of the lowest paying.
So their children get more money per capita, better schools, and yet our children who need that more, because you reverse that.
Absolutely.
So your wages to your house cost ratio is what you're really talking about.
Yes, absolutely. The wages and the property values. Because when I originally did the stats on this, it was over 1.2 million, but it's not down to.
Only if there was a proper levelling up programme to do something about that.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Maggie. Thank you, Sarah. Liam, please.
It seems every time you turn around there's a tax, you've got to pay a tax. I remember turning 21, moving out of my mum and dad's house and discovering the delights of council tax. I didn't know the differentiation between the London boroughs and our own was so high. I don't think anybody can, maybe the MPs in those London boroughs are doing a better job, or to touch on the point made at the end, maybe the levelling up isn't working the way it should be. It's unbelievable that differentiation. That was something I didn't know, so I consider this an education. For me, it's a very, very simple process to start with. Council tax, nobody minds paying into a pot. We all get it. We pay into the same pot, but we want good services for it. We're looking around, and I don't think anybody can reasonably justify that we're paying more, but that we're getting more. We're definitely getting less, or at least it feels that way.
Feels that way.
And for me, we can't attack every angle for tax. There's just too bloody many. But let's start with what we can do, and that's going to make the biggest impact, and that's take people out of those tax thresholds that have been frozen by the Conservative government. So 20,000. If I may, I don't interrupt people. No, hold on a minute. I don't interrupt people. Let me finish, and then it's all you, Maggie. I promise. Let's start with the basic and what we can do is the best, and let's take people out of that tax threshold that's been frozen for how many years now? So you'll start paying tax with a Reform government at £20,000, which on average, give or take, is about £1.5 grand saving. Now, that's not a lot of money to the really rich people, but that's a lot of money to me. That's a lot of money to a lot of people. So that's just something basic that we can do. But at the same time, there's got to be a conversation had, whether it be a Labour-controlled council or a Conservative-controlled council. There's got to be a conversation had where we can save some money. If this was run as a business, it would have been shut down a long, long time ago. Sorry, Maggie, over to you.
Can I just come on the level of the tax threshold levels? £20,000 would bankrupt the country to begin with. Secondly, back in 2010, the threshold was just over £6,000, and we've doubled it in the time. And I think it had hardly gone up under Labour, so I think we've actually set the way forward. And sadly, the reason why we've had to freeze it is because of we had a pandemic. It was like another world war, and we can't just assume that we've got the finances in the country to pay for that. We've paid for the Second World War over many, many years, and we'll be doing the same for the pandemic, and the money's not there in the same way. I mean, there was like just under 20,000 people were furloughed in Erewash, and just under 2,000 businesses receive grants. So we can't expect money to be just there when we've actually helped people keep their jobs.
Can I come back in on that?
Thank you very much.
So can I just because that was a broad statement that the reform policy would bankrupt the country. It's a tax cut on working people, and I find it really amazing that reform comes up with an idea to cut a tax, and it's awful and will bankrupt the country, but the long-term strategy of the Conservatives is to remove national insurance, but that's a good idea, and then they want to drop it if they're re-elected by another 2%. So a reform tax cut's going to bankrupt the country allegedly, but a Conservative tax cut, no problem. Now I'm not saying I'm experienced as your good self, but I don't think many people are going to go that makes a lot of sense. That's my opinion.
Country can't afford it.
Thank you very much.
Forgive me, but I don't think my view should be saying bankrupt the country after Liz Truss, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't think you've got to be right to say that.
Sorry, can we try as much as we can with this conversation to respect one another, please, so that we can make the conversation to go smoothly. There are thousands of people watching us live now, please, okay? Rod, do you want to go to the next question, please? Okay. All right, Richard.
Here's a question to be baked up.
Oh,
Yeah.
number 5. No, number 4.
Okay, if I go by one of the questions in here, it says that. Well, my glasses. Get those. Right. There is pressure to build houses in the green belt. Erewash has a lot of land that is polluted by old industries. There is no clear policy to restore contaminated land, which could help to reduce the housing shortage. Would you do anything about this? If I may start with you, Liam, please.
It's a good question. It's a very good question. I don't think for me, again, I touch back on the question Bev raised, it's a very boring answer. We'll build on the brownfield sites. That sounds like a very expensive, and you know, I wouldn't even know where to begin with that one. That sounds very expensive. We're going to have to decontaminate land. I imagine there'll be a load of paperwork, a lot of red tape that comes with that. It's obviously an option, but for me, it shouldn't be the first option. So let's work on the cheaper, more realistic options before we start tackling contaminated lands and then building on them. And I'm sure that there'll be a time, and the most important thing associated with that, I would imagine, would be the time taken to decontaminate those areas. Now, if we're going to decontaminate those areas, I'm going to imagine a reasonable time frame is going to be around a parliamentary term. Nobody's going to commit to that because it's not realistic.
Thank you very much, Liam. Maggie?
Well, we're obviously talking about the old Stanton ironworks by the sound of it, and the problem there isn't actually the contamination by the ironworks, it's actually an old mining area as well. So there are unmarked shafts there, which makes it very, very dangerous to build houses. You can build the commercial that we're getting at the moment, but to actually be able to build houses, it makes it really, really hard. But I think there is part of that area that is less likely to be affected by the mine shafts. So I do hope that we can get houses on there. I know originally it was a lot of houses and it's been reduced and reduced, but that's a perfect example of building on brownfield sites. It is quite, it's not a glib statement, but it's a lot easier to clean up sites from contamination from an industrial site such as the ironworks than it is to work out where the mine shafts are that you've no idea until it's almost too late. You don't want houses collapsing down mine shafts. So yeah, I'm hopeful that we can get some houses there, but it's not about the contamination, it's about the mine shafts.
Thank you very much, Maggie. James?
Yes, a house built on a mine shaft that's uninsurable is as bad as a house built on a floodplain that's uninsurable. The process of cleaning up industrial land, pretty much all brownfield sites need that, and that's why we put the funding through national government into local authorities in order to build those social houses. That's what we do.
Thank you very much. Adam?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I mean, I've already talked about Labour's strategy generally. It's brownfield first, then grey belt, then onwards from there. I think it's also important to say here that we also need that industrial building as well. And we've had a massive hit to our manufacturing base. My background, I didn't say this at the start, I'm a manufacturing engineer. I work at Nottingham University and spent 9 years as a researcher and last year teaching apprentices. And I'd like to see much more kind of support for our manufacturing base in the UK. And these kind of brownfield sites that are maybe contaminated, there's a lot of scope there, and especially the old Stanton site, we have got some heavy industry expansion. And I think there's a lot of scope there for improving that industrial manufacturing base. It's also important, and I said this earlier, I'm really keen on seeing the infrastructure around those things. So, you know, I read this actually in Maggie's leaflet, and I'm completely on the same page here. A new junction at the M1 would be a fantastic addition to the local area to deal with the HGV traffic issues that we've got through Ilkeston, through Sandyacre. There's also a disused rail spur. I'd love to see that brought back in. You know, it's not just about building homes. We've got to support our local industry as well, and I think those kind of sites might be really good for them.
Thank you very much, Adam. Right.
I'm going to disagree with you. I think the Labour Party's lobbyists and the people behind the Labour Party these days, who seem to have switched from the Tory Party to the Labour Party, you often see on the news where the Tory donor now switches to Labour, and Labour seems to be very much the friend of the big business guys who want to open industrial parks and extra junctions in the M1. Well, here's the thing with the extra junction in the M1, that'll open up land, open the land to developers, because that's exactly what it is. It's unlocking land. And I worry about the nature of Erewash being opened up to unlocking these potentials. They should never have got away with Stanton until they had the infrastructure. They've jumped the gun there. They should have infrastructure first and then redid Stanton. But that's cheeky. That's very cheeky. That's exactly how they do it. And once they get the road in, you can say goodbye to Erewash. You can say goodbye to Stanton by deal, because they'll probably concrete that over. And that's happening from South Derbyshire. It's happening in Northwest Leicestershire. I went down to Segro the other day. Saw exactly what they're doing around the airport. Get used to it, because that Freeport is coming, and they're just going to literally put themselves somewhere and say, we're part of the inland Freeport. You've got no rights. And we're sleepwalking into that. And our councils know that. Our MP knows that. And those free ports are nothing short of a little Del Boy Trotter corruption thing where they can just move in, pay no taxes. And you talk about the type of jobs we get. What, warehousing jobs that'll be automated in less than a generation? What, paying no tax? Amazon pay their tax. Get away, will you? We want jobs for our local people that keeps them here. You're an engineer, you're a scientist. You want our brightest and best to stay here, not working in a warehouse, working for some organisation that flies stock in and flies it back out of the free port. We don't want a road going through our areas. We don't need inappropriate developments. And it comes back to Dex and DEFRA. DEFRA budgets we absolutely cut. Environmental conditions have been cut. Go back to the EU. The EU wouldn't have put up with that because they've got environmental protection. That's what these guys have been really doing. They've been opening up our economy to fly-by-night guys and come in, pay no tax, destroy our environment, and that's literally what has been happening and what's going to happen. And we will oppose it, not because we're NIMBYs, not because we're against progress. I want progress, the right jobs in the right place for our young people, but not warehouses going up. I want brownfield development, but I want that development to be properly thought through before they go on ahead and ask our permission after they've done it. And that's what they've done. They haven't really thought through what they're doing down there because they should have put the road in first, not jury-rigged it afterwards.
Thank you very much.
I want to see, Brent, I don't want to see these warehouses he's talking about. I want to see advanced manufacturing. We make things in the UK. I know this through my whole career. James will know this through his. We make things in the UK that no one else on the planet can make. That's our great strength in this country. I want to see advanced manufacturing in Erewash. I want to see our industry boosted. And when I go and knock on doors, especially in Sandyacre and Risley and areas around there, the first thing people say when I open the door is, I want to stop the HGV traffic through my village.
Yeah.
And the answer to that is infrastructure.
Exactly. That's
Well, the answer is
I think the thing as well,
the
we have
railway
got- we
is
have-
there.
we have
Use
got-
it.
We have got great industry in Erewash, but they don't sing and dance about it. And there's some really high-tech industry as well. That's often it's actually come out of historic industry, out of the lace trade and various other things. So I think we should be very proud that we are a manufacturing area.
Yes. Thank you very much, Maggie. Go ahead.
Hi, Ian Dawes from Marklands. We've had a house over 30 years here. I just want to say that at the moment people's trust in politicians has been eroded to a point that I have never experienced before. People are very disillusioned with the main parties. People are disillusioned with promises that are broken. What are your party going to do to rebuild everybody's trust? I mean, it's a standing joke that politicians, yeah, they're all corrupt and don't tell the truth. But that's not fair on us. What is your party going to do to address that?
Thank you very much. Shall we start with Liam, please?
It's incredible to see, and I feel terrible bringing up what's happened with the Conservatives because I do feel you're getting a bad rap, and I know you're not part of the gambling that's been going off. But trust in politics is an all-time low. It's hard to see how it can be restored by one main party or the other. I think this for me becomes more of a local issue, where you look at the people sat in front of you and you go, right, I might not identify with one or two of their policies, but I like what they had to say. when it comes to me, I've listened over the last 5-6 years to the BBC, GB News, all these other political broadcasters about how we need to get new people into politics with different ideas. Somebody who's got a bit more of a conviction behind them, somebody who's not tainted by something from the past. And I'm sure if you dig up anything on anybody, if you go back far enough, you'll find that. But when we're talking about trust in politics going forward, I listened to those people, I heard what they had to say, and I thought, you know what, that sounds like a bit of me. That sounds like something I could do. I don't come, or I'd like to think I don't come with any strings attached, and I don't come with any sleaze. I don't come with any alternative agenda. If you talk to me, I will tell you what I think. You might disagree with it, but I'll tell you, and then we can go away from it. I think the summarisation of the point I'm trying to make here is politics has become very toxic. And I think what we need to learn how to do again, without sounding too condescending, forgive me, is learn how to disagree with one another without being disagreeable. So that's how I'm going to start. Let's see the impact it has.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, Maggie, please.
Thank you. Yes, I've heard those comments, we're all corrupt, we're all liars. And I actually say, I'm not corrupt, I'm not a liar. I don't think I've ever lied in my life, not even when I was a kid, to get some extra sweets or anything. So I would say, judge me on my track record. I've said that I will always fight for the people of Erewash, and that's what I've done. I've brought huge amounts of investment into the area, and I would, if I was fortunate enough to be re-elected and have that honour, I would continue to bring funding into the area and fight for what's really important. I think the other thing is, well, one thing that people don't see about members of parliament and councillors is the amount of work we do behind the scenes that we never sing and dance about. Over the last parliament, I've actually helped, sometimes it's more than once, I will say this, but I've recorded almost 25,000 pieces of casework. So that's a huge number of people I've helped, which people never see because a lot of it's confidential. So I think people we perhaps need to be saying a lot more about what we do as members of parliament and as councillors, so people get that better feeling for what we do. But I would say that to everybody, you know, judge me on my track record, and I will continue to put into practice what I've done over the last 9 years.
Thank you very much, Margaret. James?
So yes, I was at the Long Eaton Carnival, and somebody came up to our stand and said, "You're all the same." And then they paused and took a look at our stand and realised we're the Liberal Democrats and said, "Well, actually, I don't know about you." And we need to restore that trust. And what Ed Davey has been talking about is his fair deal, and it's about restoring trust in politicians. It's about giving all people a fair deal, not just the people who voted for you. You've heard here today about the Conservatives wanting to put houses on Labour voting areas and vice versa. That's not how things should be. We should be doing things fairly. It's about trust. I'm not here to get more power. I'm a union rep. I do that to help people. I'm a parish councillor. I do that to help people. I'm doing this because I want to help people.
Thank you, James.
Thanks, Paul, and thanks, Ian, for your question. I really appreciate that. I think, you know, in amongst the scandals that we're seeing at the moment in national government, it's really hard to envisage a future where we do have more trust in politicians. The approach that I take personally is I dedicate a huge amount of my time to directly engaging with people in the public, right? So I've been your candidate for a little under 2 years. It'll be 2 years on the 31st of July, but I've been very active in the local party for the last sort of 8 years. Now, in the time that I've been the candidate in 2 years, at the end of this week, we will have spoken to over 20,000 people on doorsteps. And the reason that I guarantee so much of my time to that is I think it's the absolute most important thing that I can do as a politician. I think if I want to be the best possible politician I can be, it's by having a proper deep conversation with you and with all of you on doorsteps, online, via email, all the time. So, you know, during an election campaign, my colleagues around me will know this. We get an incredible amount of communications from people. I've finished every day of this campaign, sat down on my sofa emailing everybody who's written to me about whatever issue. I'm spending so much of my time at the moment picking up the phone and having a conversation and having a proper deep chat. I know there are faces in this room of people that I've knocked on the doors of over the last couple of years, and I will still be doing that all throughout my tenure as your MP if I am indeed successful at the election in a week and a half. I think the most important thing I can do is talk to people, and if we want to restore trust in politicians, it's about forming relationships with everybody all the time. I will do.
Thank you
I
very
will
much.
do.
Can I
Oh, right. We'll have a chat afterwards.
Thank you, Adam. Yeah.
Well, first of all, we need to get the money out of politics. It's been disgusting watching the absolute froth that has been Westminster. Lobbying, VIP fast lanes. It's been absolutely repugnant. Repugnant what politics has become. And we've seen exactly what it is. And the problem has been is our electoral system is absolutely archaic. I teach about the Chartist movement in the 1830s. We've got an archaic electoral system that's been actually nobbled by the current party who have tried to gerrymander. How dare you try and take young people off the register? What are they going to vote for? It's disgusting that. Rechanging the boundaries. Basically corrupting the electoral system to a point where you're trying to hold on to power. Even the whole gambling thing about when the election is called. They based our politics down to a game. And the general public have been taken for granted. So far too long, we need a better electoral system where a percentage of people, the votes you get is what you get. And when it's this tactical voting situation where people don't vote for the people they want because they have to go in and get rid of another person, that means we've got candidates in Parliament who are not fit to lead. I lead by example. I'm a school teacher. I can't stand in front of children and say, you behave yourself if I misbehave myself. So Parliament have badly led this country. They badly led this country when they lied to this country during Partygate. And a question I have to ask you, Maggie, I've been waiting to ask you. I have to ask this. Did you lie to the general public about, in question time, about parties, or were you lied to? Either way, you went in front of the general public and you perpetuated a lie or you told a lie. So somebody either lied to you. Now you cannot, in all good questions, say, stand in front of our MP, in front of people and say, believe in me, when you have been part of an organisation. You were part of a lobby. You were in the lobby with Chris Pincher. Pincher by name, Pincher by neighbour, we were told. That is disgusting. We have had scandal after scandal after scandal, and it's across the SNP, the Labour Party, the Conservative Party. No wonder, you're absolutely right. Politics is filthy at the moment and it needs cleaned up, and we can't clean it up until we have a change. And that change comes with a new constitution, that change comes with the House of Lords. Get them out. It's feudal. Get rid of them. Elect the House of Lords. Bring democracy. You want democracy. Get rid of people who buy their way like Lord Medvedev of Siberia, best mates with Boris again. It's absolutely disgusting. You want to believe in politics? Then believe in people who go down to Parliament with the right intentions, not firing up their CV because they see what opportunities they have, like the 190 odd people who walked away from Parliament now getting a job for whatever corporation they were probably using their inside knowledge for. So our politics needs cleaned up, but it needs cleaned up by electing the right people in Parliament, not going with the political parties by choice, because you do the same thing over and over again, you get the same answer. We need actual reform, ironically. We do. We do.
Thank you.
Paul, can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
I love your passion. Can I just love your passion? Is this what you stand for or what your
Both.
party stands for?
We stand constitutionally for fair politics, get rid of the House of Lords, the Nolan principles, integrity, amend the Online Safety Act. There's far too many people online lying. We would amend that becomes a criminal offence. If you mislead the public, you should be held accountable for that. So that's what our party stands for.
Thank you very much. I have to go to question number 4. I've got 3 important questions from the live chat that I need to ask these questions because people are also watching. Can you ask your question first before I do that, because I'm watching the time?
Mine's probably multinational, but mine's to do with people getting killed. New drivers, particularly, having accidents because they've got no experience. What I would like to see is the driving test more or less as it is, and I'd like to see each year at least for the next 5 years a new driving test, or at least a theory test, to encourage these people to want to learn more instead of just passing the something that you have done. You want to learn more, want to encourage it. It's the only way I think that'll help keep the death rate down. Because a lot of them, they pass the test, they haven't got a clue about speed. They don't understand what speed is.
Thank you, Raymond. And
Again, good question. I remember, and I'm sure my mum and dad will be able to attest to this if you ever get a chance to speak to them, passing my test when I was 17 years old. I passed the second time around, failed on the first time, and I got given a car, a little run around that they had. I was a incredibly grateful for. It's a little Fiesta. There's not a mark on it. It's beautiful until I got it. And I won't say how many times I crashed, but enough for my dad to pull what was left of his hair out. The summarisation of the point I'm trying to make is, you are right. We ask people when they get to an older age to take a test to make sure that their cognitive ability is still there. I think Pass Plus, I would have liked to have done, but I did think I was
that sort of thing ought to be compulsory.
I agree. So that's the point that I'm moving on to. So I do think Pass Plus should be compulsory. I think you should be allowed to pass your test. I think you should be allowed to drive, but I think within a certain time frame, you should complete Pass Plus. With regards to the renewal of that, I wouldn't say that it would be fair to individuals to make them continuously pay every 5 years to do it. With experience comes wisdom, but you are right. I didn't know speed, and I thought I was Michael Schumacher and had his reactions, and I can tell you I was nothing of the sort. No, absolutely not. So you raise a good point, and to be honest with you, if the end result of that is that deaths are reduced on the road, then I can't see anybody arguing against that.
Thank you, Liam. Megan?
Yeah, no, I really think that's a really, really good question. And I think I took my test at 17. I passed first time.
Sure enough.
But I would say that in those days there weren't as many cars on the road.
No.
So it wasn't quite as scary. And now I think back now to if I was 17, just passed my test, what a different scenario we're in. So I think we do need, and you learn more once you have passed the test without anybody in the car than you do during your lessons.
Well, you do, yeah.
And I think also,
But you're in the lurch, and if there's somebody there to keep putting you right.
Yes, yeah. But that just having to cope by yourself and everything. But I think the other thing that does worry me as well is the number of, in effect, inexperienced drivers on the motorway. I think we need to do a lot more with that. Yeah, that's right, yes. Because I think at the moment it is, rather than just being an option, it should be compulsory. I think you do see some drivers as well with the P plates on the L plates. Once again, that'd be quite good to have as a compulsory. I think you make a very, very good point. I think it's not just about other road drivers, it's about the new drivers themselves and giving them the confidence and keeping them safe, which is so important.
And that's why they keep having a new class every so often.
Thank you very much, Maggie. James?
So you raise an interesting point. My cautionary tale would be, how are we going to pay for this? Are we going to price people out of motoring? Something that...
Well, I thought about that. Insurance companies charge an awful lot of money to new drivers. Thousands of pounds extra on there.
And you can already get a discount if you do your Pass Plus.
If you pass this, then I get a bit off, and everything you do on top, you get a bit more off that.
We already have a lower limit on the number of points you can get as a new driver. I'm not sure if there's anything new there to do.
Yeah, but you're penalising them rather than encouraging them by giving them points. You need to encourage them rather than penalise them.
Yeah, I'm not. As I say, I don't want to put people off driving by pricing them out by putting extra tests in, because driving is something we consider a freedom once we've got our licence, and gives us the freedom to go places. It gives us something to sell as a skill for work. I don't want to see that priced out, but I do share your concern about young drivers causing deaths on the roads. And the only reason that deaths have been coming down, and they have been coming down, is because of advances in emergency medicine. The number of accidents is still...
Thank you, James. Adam?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Yeah, great question, Raimi. I think this is probably one of those rare issues, maybe, unless Brent's grossly contrarian. We're probably mostly on the same page. I did do the Pass Plus, actually. It was a fantastic course. Yeah. In fact, I never drove on a motorway until I did my Pass Plus. So the first time I did it was with an instructor. It was really positive. It's not something that we're going to make a manifesto commitment on. It's not something that we focused on this time, but it's definitely something I'd like to take away and have a conversation about if we are in government in a week and a half, because I think you make a great point.
Yeah, a couple of quick ones. Yeah, I mean, 20 is plenty is a good idea. That's reduced a lot of things. And Wales has been successful in reducing the number of, and especially electric cars, they're heavier. That might work in some urban areas. Wearing your seatbelt would be good if Prime Ministers could do that. Be good if the Nottingham Crime Commissioner could stop speeding, which was caught 5 times. And anybody who's done a speed awareness course can tell you the value of education, including the Nottingham Crime Commissioner, who happened to be caught speeding 5 times in a few weeks. And that's the thing goes with education in schools. I had friends of mine at college. We had the choice of studying European studies or road traffic studies. Little I know that European studies would be kind of useless now considering Brexit, but some of my friends did road traffic studies at school, which got them ready for passing their test. And that is education, vocational skills, because you get a lot of our kids coming out, they might be drivers, and that is a good advantage. Sometimes you need a license to get a job, you need a job to get a license. And I think make it subsidised so that it encourages education, because if it's in their benefits, the children will actually go and get that done. And the Pass Plus is absolutely brilliant as well. But we also need to update ourselves with the technology. Roads are changing, the technology is changing. And I am seeing a de-skilling of drivers because the equipment is a lot reliant on the technology. And that is starting to sort of filter down into the type of driving where people use their sat-nav so much they're driving into lakes. So we kind of need this sort of Ministry of Common Sense can look at that as well, where people do need, I think, to refresh. And the government maybe need to look at sort of refresher courses that people would be advised to take. But I think that will happen naturally anyway with insurance companies, because they do have all that data on us now that we're able to say, and the speed cameras as it is. We have to be careful as well that people aren't overly surveillanced, and I think some people do feel strongly, you know, that we have that freedom as well, that people aren't sort of, you know, Big Brother isn't watching you, but at the same time you got to get the balance right between having safer roads. And I think you're good question, but I would agree completely, yes. I think we should always keep looking, updating our driving knowledge and keeping people's skills and driving up to date.
Okay, thank you.
One thing just before we finish. The IAM has been trying since 1956 to get something done.
Thank you very much. This particular question is coming from the live chat, but this is for you, Adam. From Andrew Prince. It says, as someone who comes from a military family, I am very concerned to hear that Labour intend to remove the role of ministers of veterans affairs which the Conservative Party created. Why?
Well, firstly, it's always nice to receive a comment from a Conservative Party candidate, I should say. But I think actually what I'd point to here is that the Conservative government has cut the military back to the smallest it's been since the Napoleonic Wars. We've had those discussed twice in this particular meeting. Labour would like to make sure that as soon as possible we get funding for our military back up to 2.5%. I think locally we've got a really great record supporting veterans. Our current mayor of Erewash, Kate Fenley, is ex-RAF. We specifically went out when we recruited candidates for the local elections last year to try and engage with the military community in Ilkeston, and particularly, which is quite big. So we successfully elected several veterans onto Erewash Borough Council, and I'm really glad that Kate's now the mayor. I grew up in the Air Cadets. I've got a deep history of as a cadet warrant officer back when I was a kid. So actually, I don't accept that. Labour's got a very strong plan for what we're going to do to support the military.
Can I come in on that?
They can hear you anyway, so that's why. Sorry, man.
Yeah, we have committed to 2.5% investment in the defences.
But you did make the
Let me
cuts,
finish.
Maggie.
Let me finish. By 2030. Sadly, Labour have not put a timescale to theirs at all. I think, but you didn't actually answer the question, which was actually we have a veterans minister that sits around the cabinet table, and that's made a huge difference for veterans. And it's so important to have veterans represented actually in cabinet. I would hope that other parties follow our lead.
And we have engaged completely and deeply with veterans throughout this process. I think we've got a really good record of doing that, and we'll continue to do if we are in government.
You need somebody fighting from the top.
Okay, right.
It's disgusting, isn't it? It's disgusting.
Can I also say that the Liberal Democrats are also are also committed to the 2.5%, and we do have veterans as MPs. Richard Ford, recently elected.
Thank you very much, James. This question.
Can I ask,
Former
the
MPs.
Green Party would not have any veterans because we wouldn't be starting any illegal wars, Labour Party. Nor would we be stoking the fires of playing foreign policy of the veterans in Afghanistan who've been still, those interpreters who've still been languishing over there. So no, let's get an ethical foreign policy so we don't need to send the boys over to come back. We always have money to destroy, but we never have money to rebuild. Homes fit for heroes, they were promised, they always are promised. And yes, the Green Party has veterans. I was talking to Carl Benfield, who's a veteran, who's North West Leicestershire campaigner as well. Much as we're a pacifist party, we think we should be having a better foreign policy based upon mutual understanding, and yes, working together with people as we did during the Napoleonic Wars and as we did during the Second World War. Violence and war should always be the last resort, not the first resort, unfortunately.
Thank you very much. Jan, do you have any contributions towards this?
I don't really have any counters to it. The only thing I would say is Reform's policy on this is quite clear in the sense of we want a dedicated ministerial department for this, and I can't wrap my head around a scenario where a veteran who puts his life on the line or her life on the line for their country comes back and ends up either sleeping in their car or sleeping rough. It just doesn't make any sense to me. There can't be a scenario as a British people that we allow this to happen in any way, shape or form, and that starts with an urgent pay review as well of the armed forces. It's scandalous to me that an Amazon warehouse worker can earn more than somebody putting their life on the line for their country, quite simply.
All right. One more question to all of you from Gavin Friday. He says, why does the bulk of money in Erewash go to Long Eaton and not Ilkeston? The town is seriously underfunded. If we may start with you, Liam.
Sorry, can you just repeat the question for me?
Well, it says, why does the bulk of money in Erewash go to Long Eaton and not Ilkeston? The town is seriously underfunded. Gavin Friday.
Not being in the council and not being your MP, I don't have an answer to that question for you. What I can say to you is, if elected, everything starts with a good conversation. So, again, it's Labour controlled council at the moment. I'm not going to go in hostile. I'm not going to go in with a sense of entitlement, and I'm certainly not going to go in with a gotcha moment. I'm going to go in and ask the questions, come back to you and feedback to you why that is.
Okay, thank you, Madam Please.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I was very proud to be able to secure £25 million for Erewash as part of the Towns Fund deal. And as I secured the funding, then it was the council officers who determined where that money was spent. And that was determined that at that stage, because of different issues that were in Long Eaton, then it would be spent in Long Eaton. And I'd no say over where it was spent. But since then, I've obviously secured £5 million for the cultural levelling up for Ilkeston, and that's been decided to go into Ilkeston. Prior to the levelling up, my predecessor, and I continued, managed to get the train station opened in Ilkeston, which was £10.5 million. So I think sometimes we've got a bit short memories. But the other thing is, I've sort of been banging on in Parliament about Erewash and how important it is and how we need investment. As a result of that, just a few weeks ago, the Prime Minister actually has promised £20 million to Ilkeston. Obviously, we need a Conservative government for that, and that's because it's been deemed as, once again, needing some extra money and that investment. So I'm really proud that whether it's the £25 million for the Towns Fund in Long Eaton, the £10.5 million of the train station, the £5 million for the cultural levelling up, and the extra £5 million that's gone into Ilkeston Community Hospital for the Community Diagnostics Centre, and £20 million that will come to Ilkeston should Conservatives get back into government, then I'm very proud of what I've achieved by letting people know where Erewash is and put it on the map.
Thank you very much, Jack. Do you have any contribution on that?
I would caution that were we doing this for a Long Eaton audience, they might well ask the same question, and whether Long Eaton's getting more funding and so on. However, it's a matter of perspective, isn't it? And we need a fair funding settlement. It goes without saying that our town centres need money spending on them, both Long Eaton and Ilkeston, and we want to give them a fair deal, fair funding settlement, it's just a fair deal for both, and it is a matter of perspective as to who you think gets the better deal.
Thank you very much, James.
Yeah, thank you, Paul, and thank you for that question as well. I think it's really good. I think James makes a good point there. I knock on a lot of doors in Ilkeston and in Long Eaton, and when you're in Ilkeston and you knock on a door, people say, Long Eaton gets everything. What's that about? You go down to Long Eaton and you knock on a door and everyone goes, Ilkeston gets everything. What's that about? And what we've actually had is both towns be forgotten. For a long period of time, both towns have been forgotten. You know, Maggie talks about all the funds that Maggie talks about all the funds. Can I finish, Maggie? Can I finish? Maggie talks about all the funds that she's brought in, and I think it's laudable. Every bit of lobbying that Maggie has done for the towns is laudable. However, she also legislated to set up a Hunger Games style system where towns have got to fight each other for funding. I think that is wrong. The Labour Party would end that system and would make sure that the funding goes to the towns that need it, which obviously includes both of ours.
Thank you very much, Brett.
Yeah, it's funny to say we're practically District 13 and London is District 1, going back to your analogy earlier on. So levelling up field. Germany did levelling up in the 1990s. They put billions on one side, and they have East Germany now better off than parts of the UK, including this red wall area. I work in education. I'm trying to get young people over the line. I live in the Long Eaton area and I work in the Ilkeston area, so I'm completely neutral in this debate, and I see both towns, I agree with you, Adam, both towns being a race to the bottom, managed decline, what we call it deindustrialisation. I see child poverty in the Ilkeston ward. Maggie, you should be ashamed of yourself. Child poverty. We have children who are struggling to be fed. Copmany is in crisis, and what are they going to do? Build houses in an area that what knock down the wood. The one thing they've got, but to build more houses on top of it. Absolutely forgotten and left behind. You're living in cuckoo land if you think this area is doing well under the Conservatives. And I do agree with you, because Labour also put the rod in with the managed decline. This area has been forgotten about for generations, and that's why people are, I think, disillusioned. Long Eaton is winning in some aspects, that doesn't have the same poverty levels, but actually its town centre is a lot worse off than Ilkeston Town Centre. Ilkeston Town Centre seems a bit more vibrant. So both areas have got their issues. Both areas have schools which are struggling for funding. Both areas have antisocial behaviour. Get this, Ilkeston is the 5th most dangerous town in all of Derbyshire. That is your record, Maggie. Yeah. That is your record of your government. Antisocial behaviour. And I can tell you,
that's
your
why
record.
I've got hotspots police funding for Ilkeston and
that's
for
as useful as a chocolate fire guard, because it's doing a good job, isn't it?
It's extra resources for the police.
Let's respect one another, please.
Sorry.
Okay, yeah.
So let me finish. We have for too long been forgotten about. Too long we've seen the divisions between the wealthy in these communities and the less wealthy in these communities, and the gap is getting bigger. Social mobility in both communities is getting wider. Children born in poor areas of Petersham or Copmany are not going to university. They are not able to get out of this, and we're seeing that frustration now borne out with the amount of antisocial behaviour. And all the talk about this money coming in, I'll ask this question: how much of that £25 billion deal has been delivered? How much of that's been delivered to consultants? They can't even build a bridge properly because they're stuck in committees. So that £25 million might as well be £25 million in the back pocket if somebody's going to build one bridge. That's ridiculous. So we do need a way to decipher the funds, because the funds don't go top to bottom. They should go bottom to the top. We need to enrich these communities. We need to give people a sense of pride, and a sense of pride in both places, because I am trying desperately to get young people to see the value in their communities. And I can tell you what a lot of them are doing. Brain drain. The brightest and best I've taught are leaving. They're leaving. One of them's sitting over there, he's living down in London. I'm sorry, but that's not good enough. If we want to keep young people here, we have to feel that this community is worth investing in, and that means actual investment in the people, not £25 million for wherever it can do a consultancy fee. It's got to be bottom-up development.
Thank you very much, all of you. I know I did say 4:30, but I have one more important question, and Richard would like to throw one question.
Well, it could have been two, actually.
Okay.
I'd like to take you back to an earlier question, which was about personal allowance. And I asked people who I knew wouldn't be able to come today if there was any question they'd like me to convey to you all. And one was on this subject. But listening to you, I thought, is there something you can actually all agree on in terms of, is there an objective criteria whereby you would all be able to agree that at that moment it would be safe and it would be desirable to increase those personal allowance threshold?
If we start with
You're looking a bit puzzled.
I'm not sure I understand the question, Richard.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, because in a way, you don't really agree about whether it's the right thing to do now or not. Some are saying, yes, it should be increased. Others are saying, no, it shouldn't. But that has to be with reference to some objective criteria about what's happening in the economy. Can we agree on what that objective criteria is?
Shall we start with Liam, please?
I fear
the answer to this one, Richard, is no. I will never discount the experience of somebody who has been privy to the Chancellor of the Exchequer's books. But what I would say is income tax thresholds have been frozen for too long. They just quite simply have. To go into a 40% tax threshold for somebody not earning terribly large sums of money, for me, just seems grossly unfair. And then we tip it down to the other end of the scale. At £12,500, you start, or there or thereabouts, you start paying tax. If we can find money to invest in all the things that we've invested in under the Conservative government over the last 14 years, why can we not strip out the waste in government departmental spending and give that money back to the people who need it the most, which in my personal opinion is those on the lower end, and it's certainly unfair to those people who are trying to better themselves and then fall into the trap of that 40% mark. That's my opinion on that one, so possibly not might be the answer.
Thank you very much, Leah.
I think, as I said earlier, that we've actually doubled the personal allowance over quite a short time period in comparison to our predecessors. But I think one thing that I think is really, really important is the fact we've committed to increase the personal allowance for pensioners, because we don't see why people should pay income tax on their state pension. So our policy is to have the triple lock plus. So if the state pension goes up by, say, 5%, then the personal allowance will go up by 5% as well. So always making sure that those people who can't go and improve their income level by getting either a job or whatever are able then to make sure that they keep their state pension none of its tax. I don't think anybody else along this table have made that commitment.
Thank you very much, Mike.
So
it would be
The tax threshold of that.
no, but as it goes up, it's very close now to the tax threshold because of the triple lock, and we fear that under other policies from other parties that, well, if they keep the triple lock, which some of them are committed to, then before too long, the state pension, what they get, will be above the personal allowance. So in effect, they're paying income tax on their state pension. Our triple lock plus makes sure that nobody will ever pay income tax on their state pension.
Thank you very much.
£12,500 in the recent economic crisis is ludicrous.
I'm talking about this particular policy.
Excuse me, because we've got plenty, but I'm not going to go around. James, sorry.
I can tell you what my criteria would be for when, and we are committed in the Liberal Democrats to raising the income tax threshold when economic circumstances allow.
When will that be?
So I'm going on to that.
Okay.
When we've started to bring NHS waiting lists down to a reasonable length, when we've fixed the crisis in social care, when we've brought some of the long-term sick who are suffering with mental health conditions back into the workforce to supply that growth in order to be able to afford it. We've got too many people economically inactive at the moment, and a lot of that is down to long-term mental health conditions, and that's one of the priorities the Liberal Democrats would go after. And in doing that, we'd bring in more tax revenues in order to put the thresholds up.
Thank you, James.
Thank you, Richard. I think we've already proved that we don't all necessarily agree on the answer to the question. But Labour's position is that the answer is when we end the economic chaos that the Conservatives have put us in the last couple of years since Liz Truss crashed the economy. Our number one priority is stabilising the economy. When the economy is able to grow again, that's when we can reduce the tax burden.
Thank you very much, Brett.
Obsession with growth, what I would say, we have enough in the 6th wealthiest country in the world. There's plenty of money out there always is plenty of money out there, as proved by the magic money forest that was produced during COVID, which we're all having to pay back, which was swindled away when certain people got PPE contracts and other £100 billion worth of stuff, and magic railways that don't work as well. So there's plenty of money there, and tax money wasted when it suits certain people when they have a certain interest, but not what we ask. So what will we do? With 1% tax and everybody's got 10 million. 2% tax and everybody's got a couple of billion. You know what I mean? There's plenty of those people in London ground again. Two-child benefit. I can't understand how a Socialist Party of the Labour Party can actually keep a child benefit to cap ratio. That's disgusting, especially when I say with areas like Cotman and places like that. Minimum wage up to £15 per hour. And I know small businesses would say, well, what about that? Well, put more people money in the pocket of the people at the bottom actually is the bottom up again, not the trickle down. Trickle down economics does not work. It's not worked. It's never worked. It's only just made the richer richer and the poorer poorer. So we can talk about the fact that the basic rate taxes. The fact of the matter is it's robbing Peter to pay Paul, because we've got privatised companies making record profits. They caused inflation. As a public sector worker, my wage has gone down by 26%. Whereas MP's wages have gone up by 28% in the same period of time. Businesses have gone up. You've seen the water companies making record profits while they put crap in our rivers, and yet what we would do is we'd make sure that those CEOs are not 10-to-1 ratio, that their top wage should be no better than 10-to-1 ratio for the worker at the bottom. Because in the last couple of generations, the CEOs have got bigger. Even my school now has a CEO, doesn't even have a head teacher any longer, and they've got richer and they've got wealthier, while we are scratching around to make a living. And then what? A tax on certain people because they afford to pay it. And then the triple lock. Let's be honest about the triple lock. The triple lock is a way of basically trying to buy votes of a generation of people who vote a certain way. That's just what that is. I would call that a generational tax. Let's just call that what it is as well. Because I look at the kids coming behind me and say, what kind of situation have they got? They've got trillions of debt. They have a country which doesn't make stuff. We have outside the European Union. And then you're going to ask them to join up national service for a country that's betrayed them. I'm sorry, we need to get wealth in the hands of people who are going to spend it, not people who squirrel it away and who turn it away into somewhere other tax havens. So that means taxing the people with the broadest shoulders, and that's what we would do. We'd take the burden off the people at the bottom and take the burden off the people who've actually caused these troubles in the first place. That's what we're about.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Brent.
you.
Can I just ask this final question? Is to do with police. 4 out of 5 crimes in the UK and Derbyshire go undetected. Police rarely release details of offences, even when that would be useful as a warning to residents, like a spate of burglaries in one area. We have had Derbyshire crime commissioners from the largest parties, and they do not appear to challenge the detection rate. What would you do about crime? And this will be my last question, because I promised you guys to leave you after 4:30. Shall we start with you, Brent, please?
Yeah, well, first of all, get rid of crime commissioners. They're a political appointment. Politicians should not be in charge of policing. We know what happens with that. Let's be frankly honest with you. We need police officers to be in charge of police officers. We need more police officers on the streets. We need more police officers doing community police officering as well. We also need citizens to feel empowered. And take back control of their own streets as well. So we need ordinary people to feel invested in their communities, and that comes again when you do poverty alleviation. That comes when you have better education. That comes when you have a better health service. You know, poverty. You could go for 2 ways you could solve crime. You can get tough on crime, which is the old let's get tough on crime and smack kids. I'm surprised actually. I'm waiting for a reformer conservative to come out with smacking kids in school as a problem. We've had any other policy from those guys, but we haven't had that one yet. So let's bring back the key, and that would solve our problems, because that was always a good idea. But here's the thing: you can go with tougher sentencing, or you can get to the root cause of crime. And the root cause of crime is social problems. People can disagree with you all they want, but you don't look in certain areas where there's affluence and clean services and clean this, that, the other. There's low crime in certain areas, neighbourhoods. Why is that? Because there are people invested in their communities, because they've got services, because they've got nice houses to live in, they've got all those things. Crime happens, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. So you want to get to the root causes of crime, you need to do social policy. And that means reversing the cuts, that means reversing social cuts, that means putting Sure Start centres back. Do you know that children in Sure Start, I'm praising a former Labour policy, I hope you bring it back, but the Sure Start centres, kids who did Sure Starts, GCSE grades were higher than children who didn't. And then you cut that. So you want to, as Rishi says it comes down to it, there's no magic bullet more than education. We need to reclaim our young people back, get them off the streets, because they're fantastic, our young people. And again, I'm sounding like David Cameron of Hug a Hootie, but at the same time, there is crime that happens as a reason. We have to get to the cause of it if you want to solve it, or else you can go with a big stick, and you're going to have to have more police force. And before you know it, you're in a situation where I grew up with more police officers in the street than 12,000 army soldiers and barracks everywhere, and that didn't work. If Margaret Thatcher with the British Army could not police Northern Ireland with heavy-handed policing, let me tell you, you do not police heavy-handed policing with young people. You work bottom up, and you get community policing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Because they were run out of time.
So, I mean, Brent's totally right with the Sure Start centres. They were a wonderful achievement of the last Labour government, and it was heartbreaking that they were cut over the past 14 years. They lifted people out of poverty. That is the bottom line there, and they did an incredible job. What Labour would do this time, in fact, touches on a lot of the points that Brent has just made. So, one of the things that we would like to do with engaging with young people, restoring youth services, providing a lot more in the way of youth services. Again, we've seen massive cuts to youth services over the past 14 years. But it is also important that we deal with crime when it occurs. I had Yvette Cooper, the Shadow Home Secretary, down here a couple of weeks ago, actually, to come and have a chat right here in this very room and next door, because we've had shops smashed up on Bath Street. We've had stabbings in Breaston and in Ilkeston, murders in our towns. You know, this absolutely is horrific, and it is because policing has been failed by this government. We would like to put 13,000 new police officers back on the streets, and PCSOs as well, and properly restore community policing. It's one of the things that we've lost over the last 14 years. We haven't got that Bobby that you used to know, you know, PC Blogs, PCSO Jones, who you could phone up and say, hey, those kids are here again. This is what we would like to restore, and this is what a Labour government will deliver.
Thank you, Adam. Yeah, James?
I'm going to sound a bit like a broken record and talk about strong communities and PCSOs. But I'm a parish councillor in Sawley, and we haven't met as parish councillors our PCSOs in the last year and a half. They keep changing too frequently. They're always too busy to come and see us. And we've had a stabbing on our park in Sawley. That being said, police officers got to have somewhere to put these criminals that they catch. The courts are full to capacity. The delays in processing people who have done very serious things are so acute now that witnesses are forgetting or becoming unreliable in the delay time bringing the person to court. And even if they did bring them to court and could put a reliable case together, the prisons are full. We hear every week about people having to be released early. This is just a systemic failure through all of the levels. The Conservatives have managed to put police numbers back to where they were, where they started. But the rest of the system has been neglected, and we need to fund all of it so that when police officers in the community, well, hopefully we reduce crime in the community, but with the PCSOs and the strong community engagement. But when police officers catch these criminals in the communities, they can be processed through the courts and people get justice in a reasonable amount of time, and then we can actually lock people up who deserve to be locked up.
Thank you very much, James. Maggie?
Yeah, first of all, I'd want to thank the Erewash police officers and the PCSOs for all the work they do. And they do work incredibly hard across the area, and I've got good relationships with them, and I find them very reactive, not particularly to me, but to other incidents as well. I think one of the questions was, you know, they should alert more to incidents in the area. I think they're quite good now on social media, on Facebook and on Twitter, what's it called, X now, to make these warnings so people are alert. So I think things have moved on from perhaps that person's experience of the situation. A couple of the other candidates have mentioned specific incidents. And I think we've got to be very careful when we talk, in effect talking our area down, because these incidents were actually, they're not systemic, they're actually something that's related to particular circumstances. So I think we've got to be very, very careful what we say. I think just finishing that we promised 20,000 more police officers across the country, and we've more than delivered that. In across Derbyshire we've got 351 extra police officers. I know because of the additional funding I've got for whether it's the Safer Streets Fund or the Hotspot Police Funding, that we've actually got them here in Erewash, which is so important.
Thank you very much, Maggie.
Just before I do, apologies to Brent if I've come across in any way that I would support or have ever suggested anybody would discipline my children in such an extent other than me. I can tell you as a parent, if you put your hands on my child, we're going to
I've just been waiting for it because everything
you can
else.
wait, but it ain't coming. I have family that work in the police, and I can tell you Maggie's party has recruited, is it 20,000?
350 were across Derbyshire.
Which they've they've met that manifesto pledge. I have family that work in the police force that... Yeah, of course, yeah, go.
Let him finish.
What was it? Has it increased? Yeah, it's just a point.
Yeah.
Has it increased from when the Tories took over 14 years ago? Or
No.
has it
Net numbers are
reverted
not.
back to what it was?
So net numbers haven't.
No.
Net numbers have. Net
No,
numbers
that's good,
haven't.
right.
Sorry. So you raise a good point. The point I'm trying to make is if you talk to any police officer, they will tell you that we need more police, and there is a commitment in our contract that says we want over the next term of Parliament another 40,000. Now that's a big number. But what most police officers will tell you is the processing of paperwork and the time that it takes them to do it removes them from patrolling the streets, which they want to do. That's what they want to do. So for me, it's not just a blanket, here's 40,000 new police officers, away you go, right? Because if they're dealing with all the crime, and let's be honest, it might be the case statistically that it's gone down in certain areas, but it feels like it hasn't. We need people behind the scenes to be able to process this paperwork, to take it off the police force so that they can do their day job and do it effectively. And if you vote for reform, that's what we're going to commit to.
Thank you very much, Leah. Can I take this opportunity to thank all of you for coming? I have thousands of questions, but there's no way we're going to get around to it. But it's been a pleasure, talking to all of you today.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Brent.
Cheers,
And thank you, Adam. Thank you, James. Thank you, Maggie. Thank you, Leah.
Cheers.
Thanks, Maggie. Thanks, John. Absolutely.
I'll get up and come to you. Sorry.
Cheers, Liam. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Cheers, Liam. Well done.